I never expected Ryan to be anything more than my sister's boyfriend. To me, he was just another handsome stranger she'd bring home. Flashy smile, expensive shoes, and the kind of confidence that could sell lies as easily as love. But from the moment I met him, I knew he was different. And not in the cliché, rom-com way. It was something quieter. Something dangerous. It started on a Thursday evening. I was curled up on the living room couch, a half-empty mug of coffee on the table beside me, when she burst in. Leah, my younger sister, eyes lit with that electric spark she reserved for drama and men. "You home?" she called out, barely waiting for an answer. I looked up. "Yeah, where else would I be on a Thursday night?" She rolled her eyes. "Well, I brought someone. Be nice." And just like that, he walked in behind her. Ryan. Tall, with messy auburn hair that looked like it had been styled by accident, not design. His jaw was sharp, but his eyes were soft, too soft for someone dating my hurricane of a sister. He wore a dark sweater that clung to him in all the right ways, and he smiled like he already knew me. "You must be Jordan," he said, extending a hand. I shook it, trying to hide the jolt of awareness that came with it. "That obvious?" "You two have the same nose," he replied, then laughed at my expression. "Don't worry, it's a good nose." Leah was already halfway to the kitchen, asking if we had any wine. Ryan and I were left standing awkwardly in the living room. Except, it wasn't awkward. Not really. "So," I said, gesturing for him to sit, "how long have you been seeing Leah?" He sank into the couch, legs spread like he owned the space. "About a month. She finally agreed to let me meet the mysterious brother who never shows up in her pictures." I raised an eyebrow. "She talks about me?" "More than she probably thinks." The rest of the evening blurred into laughter and easy conversation. Leah did most of the talking, stories from college, gossip from work, things I'd heard 100 times before. But every so often, I'd catch Ryan watching me. Not in a leering way. It was curious. Like he was studying a painting he hadn't decided if he liked yet. Later, Leah dragged him to her room, and I tried to brush it off. People like Ryan didn't look at people like me that way. I was quiet. The type who watched storms rather than chased them. Besides, he was straight. Dating my sister. Totally off limits. Still, I dreamed about his smile. Over the next few weeks, Ryan became a regular fixture in our lives. Leah adored him, bought him hoodies to leave at our place, bragged about him to our mother, even tried to involve him in our weekly game nights. To her credit, she seemed genuinely happy. And to my shame, I was jealous. Not just of her relationship, but of how easily Ryan fit into every room. He asked questions, real ones, and actually listened to the answers. He noticed things. Like how I always folded my sleeves exactly twice. Or how I couldn't start the day without black coffee and a slice of burnt toast. One night, Leah had to work late. Ryan showed up anyway. "She said you'd be home," he explained, holding up a bag of takeout. I figured, why waste good food? We sat on the balcony, a breeze tugging at the edges of our sweaters, city lights flickering below. He opened up in a way I hadn't seen before, told me about his father's silence, his fear of becoming boring, his dreams of writing a book he'd never started. "I don't know," he said, tapping his fingers against the railing. "I feel like I'm always performing. Like people only want the version of me that smiles and makes them feel good." I looked at him. Really looked. Maybe they've just never given you space to be more than that. He didn't answer right away. Just turned his head, eyes locking onto mine with a gravity that made me forget how to breathe. "You're different, Jordan," he said finally. "You don't talk just to fill silence. You listen." My throat tightened. "So do you." Something passed between us. Fragile, unnamed. Not a declaration. Not a confession. But real. Tangible. We didn't touch. We didn't need to. The air did all the work. A few days later, Leah burst into my room without knocking, her voice bubbling with excitement. "We're planning a weekend getaway, me and Ryan. Just 2 days. Can you house sit? Water the plants, feed my fish, that kind of thing?" I blinked. "Since when do you have fish?" She waved it off. "Ryan bought one. He thinks it's therapeutic." I agreed. Of course I did. Always did. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, deliberate circles. I told myself I was happy for them, that Ryan's kindness wasn't anything special, that I was just lonely and projecting and desperate for any kind of connection. But when I closed my eyes, all I saw was him, smiling at me across the balcony, eyes soft, voice low, asking questions no one else ever bothered to ask. And maybe that was the first real betrayal. Not what we would eventually do, but what I was already starting to feel. Leah left on a gray Friday morning, suitcase dragging behind her, heels clicking across the front porch like punctuation marks to a goodbye I wasn't sure I wanted. She's obsessed with cabins lately, Ryan said as we stood in the doorway watching her Uber pull away. No signal, no service, just trees and anxiety. I smirked. You didn't want to go? He shrugged. She insisted I stay behind to rest. Said I've been working too much. She's not wrong. The door closed with a soft thud, leaving us in the silence that follows absence. The kind that settles in your chest before it settles in a room. Coffee? I offered, already turning toward the kitchen. Yeah. You make it stronger than she does. We moved around each other like we'd done it before, like routine had already wrapped us in its arms. I ground the beans, he reached for mugs. There was no music, no distractions. Just the clink of ceramic, the hiss of boiling water, and the awareness of our proximity. He leaned against the counter, watching me. You always this quiet in the mornings? I think best when no one's talking. Is that why you like being alone? His voice was casual, but the question wasn't. I poured the coffee slowly. I don't like being alone. I just don't like being with people who make me feel lonelier. Ryan's lips parted like he was going to say something, but instead, he just nodded. Yeah, I get that. We ate breakfast in the living room, legs crossed on opposite ends of the couch, plates balanced on our laps. The conversation drifted from movies to music, back to family. He told me about his younger brother, how they used to build cities out of shoeboxes and dreams. I miss how easy it used to be, he said, before everyone started expecting me to be something. I looked at him then, really looked. His hair tousled from sleep, the curve of his collarbone visible through his loose shirt, the way his eyes flickered with something he didn't quite say. You don't have to be anything with me, I said before I could stop myself. A silence settled. Not uncomfortable. Just full. That evening, the rain came, light at first, then persistent, rhythmic. We stayed inside, watched an old black and white film I loved. I half expected him to get bored, but he didn't. He leaned in, genuinely curious, asking about the cinematography, the story, the characters' motivations. At one point, our shoulders touched. Not by accident, by proximity. Neither of us moved. Jordan, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I turned, eyes meeting his. Yeah. Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something that may never happen? The question lodged in my throat. It wasn't about the movie. It wasn't about anything simple. Yes, I said. All the time. His hand didn't touch mine. But it hovered, close enough to feel the heat. And when the credits rolled, neither of us reached for the remote. The moment stretched, elastic and charged. I should get to bed, he murmured, standing too quickly, like movement would fix what silence had made real. Yeah, I replied, though I didn't move. But I watched him leave. Watched his back disappear down the hall. I slept restlessly. Dreamt of moments that didn't happen. Or maybe they almost did. The next day, the sun returned. But the air between us stayed heavy. We pretended everything was normal. Made lunch together, joked about Leah's obsessive skincare routine, debated whether cereal was a soup. But the glances lingered longer. His fingers brushed mine when we reached for the same spoon. And I saw the way his gaze dropped to my mouth when I laughed. I could feel the inevitability gathering. That night, we sat on the balcony again. The city buzzed below, but up here, it was just us, suspended in something we couldn't name. I'm not who you think I am, Ryan said suddenly. What do you mean? I'm not sure I'm straight. I don't know what I am. He looked at me like that confession might shatter something between us. I'm not asking you to be anything, I said quietly. I'm just here. His breath caught. And then he reached for my hand, slowly, gently. When our fingers intertwined, it wasn't some dramatic revelation. It was quiet. Like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. We sat like that for minutes or hours, I couldn't tell. Until he turned, faced me fully. "I've never kissed a guy before," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "You don't have to." "I want to." There was no music swelling in the background. No perfect lines. Just two people trying to make sense of something terrifying and beautiful. The kiss was tentative at first, soft, searching. Then deeper, more certain. He cupped my face like he wasn't sure I was real. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us spoke. Words felt too small. We went inside. His hand still holding mine. We didn't mean for it to happen again. But it did. That night. And the next. It wasn't just physical, it was confessional. A tangle of lips and whispered truths, of skin and guilt and longing. I memorized the lines of his body like poetry. He held me like he was drowning and I was air. But every time the sun came up, reality returned. By the third morning, he stood by the window, shirt half-buttoned, gaze far away. "This can't keep happening," he said. I nodded, throat tight. "I know. She doesn't deserve this." "No, she doesn't." He left soon after, without breakfast, without goodbye. Just the sound of the front door closing behind him. I sat alone, sunlight spilling across the floor, the room smelling faintly of him and regret. And when Leah texted me later, asking how things were going, I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "All good here. Ryan's great." I hit send. And hated myself. The silence between Ryan and me grew louder after Leah returned. She breezed in with photos of pine trees and a heart full of nostalgia, unaware of what had transpired in her absence. Her happiness hit like a punch, sharp, bright, and undeserved. "You should have come with us next time, Jordan," she said, plopping her duffel on the floor. "Ryan missed you." I forced a smile. "Yeah. Maybe." He stood behind her, quiet. His eyes didn't meet mine. That was our new rhythm, polite avoidance wrapped in routine. He didn't linger after dinner. I didn't sit on the balcony anymore. And we never, ever found ourselves alone in the same room. But the damage had already been done. It echoed in every breath. A week later, Leah caught me off guard. She was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone when she asked, "Has Ryan seemed off to you lately?" My throat tightened. "Off how?" "I don't know. Distant. Like he's got too much in his head but doesn't want to talk about it." I shrugged, trying to sound neutral. "Maybe he's just tired." She chewed her lip. "Do you think he's seeing someone else?" The question hit with surgical precision. Not angry, just curious. Vulnerable. My voice betrayed me. "No. Ryan wouldn't do that." She smiled faintly. "You sound more sure than I am." I excused myself after that. Locked myself in the bathroom and stared into the mirror, half expecting it to crack under the weight of what I'd become. Liar. Coward. Ryan called me 3 days later. "Meet me," he said, voice low. "Urgent." Not at the apartment. We met in a small park across town, half-dead trees, squeaky swings, and a rusted bench that didn't care who we were. He looked thinner. Paler. "I can't keep doing this," he said. "It's tearing me apart." "I know," I murmured. "I'm breaking her heart every time I look at her." I stayed quiet. Because every word he spoke scraped truth across my ribs. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Jordan." "Neither did I." His eyes met mine, glassy. "But I don't regret you." That was the cruelest kindness. Because I didn't regret him either. I just regretted the cost. He reached for my hand and held it like a lifeline. We didn't kiss. We didn't even hug. Just sat there, fingers interlocked, mourning something we were still in the middle of. "I need to tell her," he said finally. I nodded, though the thought made my stomach twist. "Soon," I said. "She deserves to hear it from you." But soon is a fragile word, full of intention and lacking in courage. Leah found out on a Tuesday. I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table, face blank, a screenshot glowing on her phone. One of my texts to Ryan. A message I should have deleted. A mistake I couldn't undo. Her voice was calm, but brittle. You and Ryan? My whole body froze. Leah, How long? She interrupted, eyes like steel. A few weeks, I confessed, shame burning behind my teeth. It wasn't planned. It just. Don't, she snapped. Don't say it just happened. That's what people say when they want to make betrayal sound romantic. I flinched. She stood, shaking. I trusted you. You're my brother. I know, I whispered. And I hate myself for what I did. Do you love him? The question caught me off guard. Not because I hadn't asked it myself, but because saying it out loud felt like handing over a weapon. I don't know, I said. Maybe. I think I could. She stared at me like I was a stranger. Then quietly, get out. I didn't argue. I just left. Grabbed my keys, walked out the door, and let the weight of it crash over me like a wave I'd seen coming from miles away. Ryan called that night. I didn't answer. He texted. She knows. I stared at the screen, fingers trembling, then powered off my phone. For the first time in weeks, I didn't want to hear his voice. I didn't want comfort. I wanted consequences. Days passed. Leah went radio silent. Ryan too. I moved into a friend's guest room, lived out of a suitcase, and tried to find pieces of myself worth keeping. There weren't many. Every night I thought about what we did, how easily we tore through something sacred. Not just a relationship, but a bond that had taken a lifetime to build. A sibling's trust. A home. And still, somewhere in that wreckage, I missed him. Not the thrill, not the secrecy, but him. The way he listened. The way he looked at me like I wasn't invisible. I wondered if he missed me too. A week later, I got a knock at the door. It was Ryan. He looked broken. Pale and wild-eyed, like someone who hadn't slept in days. She's gone, he said. My heart dropped. What do you mean? She packed her stuff and left. Said she needed space. She wouldn't tell me where. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I ruined everything. No, I said. We did. He stepped inside, shut the door. The space between us was a battlefield, littered with truths we couldn't unsay. I keep thinking, he whispered, if we had just waited. If we talked to her first. Been honest. I shook my head. But we weren't honest. That's the point. He reached for me, but I stepped back. Ryan, we don't get to be the victims here. His shoulders slumped. Do you still want me? The truth was, I did. But not like this. Not in the shadow of destruction. Not when love had turned into collateral damage. I want you, I said. But not at the cost of her. He nodded slowly, as if those words hurt more than silence. Maybe someday, he said. Maybe. 2 months passed. The seasons shifted, the city wore a thinner coat of warmth, and I learned how silence could stretch itself into a kind of penance. Leah still hadn't reached out. I didn't blame her. Every day I fought the urge to send her a message, to apologize again, to ask if she was okay, to beg for forgiveness I hadn't earned. But I didn't. Some wounds need time. Others need distance. Ours needed both. Ryan and I hadn't spoken since that night. No calls. No texts. Just static. I didn't know if he was still in the apartment, if he was eating, if he was breathing okay. I missed him in a way I didn't know how to carry. Like an echo that followed me through every crowded room. But missing someone isn't the same as being right for them. And love, if that's what it was, doesn't erase betrayal. I started over in small ways. Moved into a new apartment. Got rid of the mug Ryan used every morning. Blocked every shortcut that led to his Instagram. I forced myself to sit with the emptiness, let it settle inside me like dust in sunlight. There was no dramatic transformation. No tearful epiphanies. Just the slow, ugly work of facing myself. One morning, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a small leather journal, soft and worn. Tucked inside the front cover was a note in Leah's handwriting. Don't speak. Just read. You never let me say my side, so here it is. My chest tightened. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and opened the first page. She didn't yell in her writing. There was no venom, no theatrics. Just raw, unfiltered grief. She wrote about how it felt to lose two people at once. How betrayal from a lover cuts deep, but betrayal from family bleeds slower. How she'd questioned everything, her choices, her instincts, her worth. "You both made me feel invisible," she wrote. "And I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you the same way again." She ended the letter with 5 words I hadn't expected. "But I hope you're healing." I closed the journal and cried. Not for myself. Not even for Ryan. For her. For what we'd stolen. For the grace she gave me anyway. Later that week, I ran into Ryan. It was at the small bookstore on 8th, the one with the creaky floors and the mismatched chairs. He was standing in the poetry aisle, flipping through a collection of Rilke. Our eyes met. He smiled, tired and soft. I stepped closer, unsure. "Hey," I said, voice quiet. "Hey," he echoed. We stood in that awkward silence that happens when ghosts meet again. Then he asked, "How've you been?" "Learning," I said. "Mostly from mistakes." He nodded. "Me too." We walked together for a while, the city humming around us. No destination. Just shared footsteps. "I read her letter," I said. His eyes flicked toward mine. "She sent you one too?" I nodded. "She forgave you?" "She didn't say that," I replied. "But she didn't have to." He exhaled slowly. "I haven't heard from her since she left. Maybe she needs more time. Or maybe I don't deserve to hear from her." I paused. "We don't get to decide what we deserve, Ryan. Only what we do next." He looked at me then, really looked. "And what are you doing next?" I shrugged. "Trying to be someone I can live with. Someone she might recognize again someday." He smiled faintly. "I miss you." "I miss who we were," I admitted. "But I think we were built on the wrong things." He nodded. "Yeah. I think we mistook the wreckage for shelter." There was a bench nearby. We sat. Not close, not far. Just, honestly. He told me he'd started therapy. Said he was working through some things. Childhood expectations, buried feelings, the guilt that kept him awake. He didn't mention Leah much. I didn't push. When we stood to leave, he asked, "Would you ever want to try again? With us?" The question hung there, gentle but heavy. I looked at him, this man I had loved in the wrong way, at the wrong time, with the wrong intentions, and I answered truthfully. "Maybe one day. But not now. Not like this." He nodded, eyes sad but understanding. "Then I hope that day comes. And that we're better people when it does." "So do I said. We didn't hug. We didn't make promises. Just went our separate ways under a sky that didn't need to be dramatic to feel infinite. A few weeks later, I opened my journal and started writing again. Not to Leah. Not to Ryan. To myself. I broke something beautiful. And yet, somehow, I'm still learning how to build. Not to replace what I lost, but to become someone worth finding again. Closure, I'd realized, isn't always a door shutting. Sometimes it's learning to live with the draft. And consequences? They don't always come with sirens or screaming. Sometimes, they're the quiet space where growth finally finds you.